We've all been there in a live conversation in English, native speakers as well, and we are asked a question which we are just not quite sure how to answer. Sometimes we might be in a live conversation and we're sort of listening to the conversation and we're really just not following the drift at all. So what do we do? A lot of the time, people will just simply nod in agreement when in fact they have no idea what's being said at all. And my background, in fact, before teaching was that I used to run my own business, and we used to do trade shows around the world, and we used to exhibit our products in the Chinese pavilion at different international exhibitions. So I would be standing, selling my products in the exhibition hall on my booth. And when I had some time, I would be listening in to the conversations that were going on around me, and I would be looking across the aisle to other booths and other booths next to me. I'd be listening into the conversations, and a lot of the time, buyers would be asking questions, and suppliers would just simply be nodding, And if there was anything that they were not quite sure about, they certainly wouldn't be clarifying meaning at all. And I really had the impression that a lot of the conversations were just simply one way. It was just a question and answer session. And if there was anything more detailed, then the suppliers would find that quite difficult to answer. And I think one of the problems is that when people go into any type of a conversation, they're ill-prepared. And you have to prepare yourself for those difficult moments in a conversation whereby somebody, and this isn't just an issue for non-native speakers, this is also an issue for native speakers as well. You have to prepare yourself mentally for those situations in which you are a little bit unsure how to proceed, how to in fact answer. So I have put together a list. Let me quickly switch my screen. I have put together a list of what I have termed emergency English phrases every non-native speaker needs in business. So let's get started. So one of the classic times in which you need to be able to have some sort of an emergency phrase to help you out is when you need some more time to think. A lot of the time in a conversation, you are maybe just under pressure. You might be feeling a little bit stressed because the conversation that you are having with somebody is important. It may lead to an order, for example, a sizable order in some situations, and you don't want to mess it up. So in those situations when you're feeling under a little bit more pressure, you may just naturally need a little bit more time to think, and you can use these two expressions to do that. For example, somebody asks you a question, not quite sure how to respond, so you would say, let me think about that for a moment. Or you can say to somebody, that's a good question, let me come back to you on that. You need to come back to them a little bit later. Next. So the most important thing is not to come across as looking lost, as looking vacant, as looking not like you're there at all. And by interjecting in the conversation on a regular basis, you can give your conversation partner the feeling that you are involved in the conversation. So in a situation whereby you're not quite sure about the drift of the conversation, or in fact the questions that are being asked, you could say something along the lines of, could you clarify what you mean by that? Or if you are sort of following the drift of the conversation and you're not quite 100% sure about what's being said, maybe you are 70 or 80% sure, then in those situations, you can try to clarify the conversation as you see it. So you can say something along the lines of, just to make sure I'm following you. And then you can summarize what your understanding of the conversation is. And finally, let me check I've understood this correctly. So that's another way in which you can clarify your understanding. Now, as I've said previously, I used to be involved in manufacturing, and there are always problems which occurred from time to time. Any business has problems. Things go wrong. And how do you deal with these things in a foreign language? So something's gone wrong at work. Let me just take an example that I have. Maybe there would be delivery delays. And a lot of the time, these problems are not always of your making. For example, there might be a power cut, there might be a staff sickness. There could be any number of reasons why a problem suddenly occurs, which you are unable to do anything about. And it has consequences, for example, for a customer, and you need to speak to the customer and explain to the customer in English what has occurred. So I think the most important thing to do is always to apologize. So you can start with something like, I am so sorry for, using my example, the delay. Then it's important to give a reason why, which was caused by a power outage, staff shortages, whatever it might be. And then you need to try to give some sort of indication of what you are doing or trying to do to solve the problem. So here's what we are doing about it. We've all been in conversations, and the conversation has just gone on for too long, and you need to be able to make what I would call, let me bring this slide up, the graceful exit. And by that, I mean you need to try to close the conversation with one person and move on to another person or move on to something else. So very simply, you can say something along the lines of, let's pick this up again tomorrow or next week or whenever it might be. So very simple, direct, and to the point. You're not being rude. You're just indicating that it's time to bring the conversation to a close. Now, if you've been in business long enough, there are always times when conversations get what I would call tense. When you've got people trying to do business with each other, you've got different positions that are emerging. Inevitably, there is going to be tension, and sometimes these tensions can boil over. So what do we do about it? Well, when things get tense, the most important thing to do is to acknowledge the fact that things are getting tense. And you can say something along the lines of, I see your point, let's find a solution together. So you need to recognize the other side and then immediately indicate that you want to work together to find a solution, a common solution. So there you have it, a list of emergency phrases that you can use in conversations which are not going the way in which you want them to, conversations which maybe you're not quite grasping, you're not really following, and they can be used to help you get back on track or certainly regain a level of control, which will help you to forge stronger relationships, stronger business relationships going forward.